I'm Sean Holyfield, CEO and founder of Secure HR, an amazing workplace. So I get asked quite frequently, when do you know the right time to let somebody go? We're talking about the topic of firing. And this is a tough one. And it's probably one of the most difficult decisions that an individual leader has to make in their role running a group or running an organization. It's never fun to let somebody go. At least I've never met anybody who enjoys firing people. And as a result of that, what I wanted to go over today and talk a little bit about are some of the common myths or misconceptions connected to firing. And by going over those, hopefully this is going to provide you with some valuable information to be able to tackle some of those myths that are floating out there and put you in a better position to make smart, quick decisions as opposed to getting tied up or hung up with all the emotions that can get stirred up when you're talking about letting somebody go. So let's talk about kind of the opposite side of the fence. Like, a lot of these myths are really tied to letting somebody go. Let's first talk about a common myth, which is that you should fire somebody fast if they've made a big mistake, or if they make a big mistake, you should let them go. This is completely untrue. People make mistakes all the time at work, and it's an organization's role and responsibility to make sure that they're taking their people and that they're training them and they're giving them the information that they need in order to be successful. Now, if you have an individual who's made a mistake and you fire someone for that, and the idea, and maybe in your mind, is that I want to set an example for others, all you've done is set an example for how you as an organization don't make the time to train and let your people know what to do. And you've actually created an environment where people feel unsafe speaking up if they don't know how to do things. And this is devastating for an organization. The most successful organizations are ones where they've created a culture or they've created a way of operating where if mistakes are made, that's fine. Let's learn from them and let's move on, right? And that encourages everybody in the organization to actually speak up and let you know whether or not they know what they're doing or not. And it's the fastest way to actually get things done. When you have a line of people waiting outside your door, so to speak, that are willing to come to you and say, hey, I'm not really sure what I'm doing. I want to make sure that it's right. That's the type of environment you want within your organization. I don't necessarily mean physically outside your door, but you really want a group of people that are coming to you and saying, hey, raising their hands, so to speak, I'm not sure what to do here. Can I have help? Those are some of the best resources you'll ever find because they care enough to come to you and say, hey, I want to get it right. So punishing people for mistakes is just not a good idea. Now, I totally understand that when somebody continues to make mistakes repeatedly, over and over, and those mistakes are harmful to the organization, that may be one of many reasons to let that person go. But firing people based on the first mistake or like a single big mistake is a mistake. Really what should be done is an objective look at that individual, sort of a standing back and taking a look at this individual, their performance. Have they meaningfully contributed to the organization? Have they contributed to their team members? Are they somebody that sort of raises spirits when they're in a room, or are they somebody that kind of just crushes them and you might describe as more toxic? Those are much more important factors than whether or not they actually made a mistake on a particular project. It also often will create a lot of conflict when you go in to let somebody go over a mistake because they've got all the reasons why they made the mistake. And using that as the sole reason to let somebody go is just not a good idea. So firing somebody fast for the first mistake is a mistake. And it's a common issue that I've run into talking to organizations where something bad will happen, a leader will get really frustrated and then want to let that person go right away. And it kind of gets confused with this concept of firing somebody fast. Jack Welch, for those who don't know, successful CEO at GE for years, wrote a book, and it's pretty popular, about how you want to get the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus. And he had a grading system where he would let go, I think, the bottom 10% if they were a grade of a C. So he had like 3 grades, A, B, C. This got a lot of criticism and got a lot of attention for either some people thought it was a great idea, some people thought it was a terrible idea. But the overall message that Jack was trying to send in having read that information was really, you have those top performers that are great. You want to keep those that contribute to your organization. And you have those performers that aren't doing well. And those people that are not doing well, you should get them off the bus quickly. So this idea of firing fast is a smart idea if, in fact, the person isn't performing well, but not based off a single mistake. So I don't think Jack would have agreed to just fire somebody based on a single mistake. Anyway, that's myth number one. So myth number two, you should wait until you're 100% sure. So this is something that I kind of put in the bucket of delay or pauses or reasons why not to let somebody go. I myself have suffered from this one on more than one occasion where there's an individual, they are not necessarily performing well, they're not doing the things that they really need to be doing, and this behavior is repeated over time. And I have in the past leaned into, well, let's just give them one more chance. Let's make sure that we did everything we could to help them. Let's add extra time before we let them go. And that's actually really destructive to your organization. So the longer you wait to let somebody go, when in truth, you know they need to go. You might be 90% there, you might be 80% there, but you're maybe not in your mind 100% there. If you're 80 or 90% towards I need to let this person go, they've been given clear expectations. They've been given feedback. Documentation has been clear and consistent. You know, all these things are in place. You've talked to them on multiple occasions about the behavior that's kind of nagging at you as a reason to let them go, and you're still not there because you haven't done one thing or two things. I would encourage you to talk with some other leaders, and you probably need to make that decision to let them go. Waiting until you're 100% sure is destructive to the people around that individual. So you have this person who's not doing their job, they're not carrying their weight, so to speak. They are creating problems for those around them, and others that are working, others that are doing their job, look at that behavior by you as a leader, by you as a company, and it's demoralizing. It's sort of the analogy, or one analogy would be a sports analogy, right? You have this great high performing team. You might have this wide receiver that keeps dropping the ball. They just can't catch the ball. They're not showing up for practices. You've given them multiple warnings. They've got a bad attitude. They blame others. It's dragging the team down. And by getting that player off the team, your team is going to be more successful, even if you have to kind of go through that hard process of how do I replace them, and so forth and so on, which is going to take us to our next myth. But really, don't wait till you're 100% sure. Just make sure that you've been clear about your expectations, that feedback has been given, that you know that the person understands what was expected of them, and that you've had some consistent documentation. You don't need to be 100% sure to let them go. What you need to be is you need to be 100% sure that you've communicated, that the person understands that there's been an issue. But don't wait or drag your feet to let somebody go. It's important to let them go quickly. Myth number 3, if they're highly skilled, you should keep them. So let's talk about this one. And this is probably one that bites most people in the butt, so to speak. This is the one that I have found has been the most difficult for myself, and I could call it a byproduct of my training. I went to law school, postgraduate business school, so forth, so on, done a lot of schooling. And one of the things that I have always admired in resources is their skill. Even though it's the least important of the big 3 things that you look for when you're hiring. You look for attitude, you look for hard work, and then you look for skill. And skill is really third because it's the one that can be trained. I have always had sort of a soft spot or an admiration for really high-performing players. Historically, it's been a leadership weakness of mine because it's put me in a situation where I've made excuses for highly skilled people that outside of that skill could be an absolute train wreck. And it's really, this is probably the most challenging one for organizations, and it's the one I'll probably maybe spend the most time talking about here today. So when you've got somebody on your team who's really good at their job, and I mean highly skilled, like you might even say they're the best at what they do, it's really easy to fall into the trap of believing that it's impossible to replace them. And I have experienced this over and over again, where I may hire an attorney or a software programmer or a designer, whatever it is in my software companies. And this person is so good at what they do that I kind of get into the situation where I begin to believe that it would be impossible to replace them. Now, let's just sort of pause for a moment. Of course, it's going to be impossible to replace that human being. That individual human being is their own person. They've got their own personality. And it may be true that it's going to be impossible to replace that person, right? But as a smart leader, as a leader whose job it is to safeguard the organization, make sure that it does well, it's important to remember that each role within the organization can be filled. It is possible to go get another professional to do that job. It's pretty rare that you run into a situation where you have a person that's doing a job and they're the only person on the planet that can actually do that. As evidenced by the fact that there are millions of jobs on job boards. There are tons of people that come out of school every year. There are lots of smart people on the planet. And there are a lot of people that would be thrilled to come work at your organization and do a great job at whatever it is that you need them to do. So falling into the trap or feeling like I can't lose this person because they're the best or they are the most effective, they're the most highly skilled. It may be true that this person is the most highly skilled person you've met, or it may be true that you've spent years training this person and they have become really good at their role. But don't let skill alone get in the way of letting somebody go when you know it's important to let them go. And I've seen entire organizations just get crippled over having a person who's highly skilled, but yet creating chaos and upset and problems within the organization. I've seen that entire organization get crushed from within because that one skilled person was dragging the whole team down. And I've heard the excuses from leaders, but that person's so good. She's so brilliant. He's so smart. They're so great. And I get it. I've made those excuses myself. But the most important thing to remember is that if this person is not contributing to your team, if they're creating problems with the people around them, if they're doing things that are questionably right. They may be doing things that border on illegal. They may be doing things that border on completely unethical, and you're trying to hide those things or kind of shove them in a corner. That highly skilled person, I'm assuming that the reasons that you're making excuses for them, like I have in the past, that highly skilled person is the person that's destroying your company and its culture from within. You've got to get them off the bus if you're using Jack Welch's analogy. Or you just got to get them out of your organization. Don't let skill get in the way of letting somebody go. Just don't make that mistake. I've made that mistake. I've seen others make that mistake. And even though everybody admires a highly skilled player, everybody admires somebody who's really good at their job, people will admire you more if you have the courage to let that person go with the confidence that you can go replace them than if you keep that person who's in your organization that's causing problems and creating toxicity or other issues. If you keep that highly skilled person there, people will be taught the wrong lesson, which is if you're just really smart, then it doesn't matter what you do, which is not the message that you want to send. It is a very destructive outcome for an organization. And I'd encourage you to remember that anyone can be brought in who is upbeat and motivated and hardworking and be taught how to do things. Sure, you may look back years from now and say, geez, that really highly skilled person I had was the best I ever had. And they may still be the best you ever had. But you can get other people in there that can do that job or perform those functions. Even if it requires you to get two people in there to replace that one person, you can get them in there and actually get things back on track and have a team that's working really well together and there's not lots of problems. So yeah, don't keep a person just because they're highly skilled is really that third myth. Okay, so myth number 4, that it's nicer or kinder to avoid firing someone. This is something I run into all the time where an individual wants someone to leave, but rather than actually make the steps or take the steps to fire them, they're waiting for the person to quit. Terrible idea. Anything that's a delay in letting a person go that shouldn't be there isn't good for them, and it's not good for you. It's not kinder to them. It's not kinder to you. I'll give you a real example. I was working in an organization. I had an individual who really wasn't loving their job. I could tell they didn't love their job. I could tell their heart wasn't in it. I could tell that they were really just sort of coming there because they were getting a paycheck. I made time to sit down with them, and I found out that what they really wanted to do was pursue this thing that they had always dreamed of doing. We talked through a timeline to smartly get them out the door for them to pursue that. And I ran into them years later, and they were doing great. They loved the new role that they had. They were able to pursue the dream that they had, and they were miserable doing what they were doing. So it wasn't kinder to avoid finding a way to get them off the team. It was much kinder for me to find out, what is it you really want to do? What is it you're really passionate about? Well, then go do that. Don't sit here because you feel obligated to support the team. Don't sit here because you love the people that work here. Go do what you really want to do, because if it's truly where your heart's at, you're going to be happier and it's better for you and it's better for your team. I actually, towards the end of my last company, we were able to shrink turnover down to 0%. And I'm not making this up. I sort of wish I had videos of this where I could share these. Obviously, I can't. But as I was letting people go, because we did have involuntary turnover, there were some people that we got off the bus, so to speak. And in those last meetings I had as I was wrapping up that organization, and I'd say in the last probably 18 months to 2 years, I let 4 people go. And of those 4 people I let go, I think 3 of them actually physically got up and hugged me as they left. Now, these are people that I had just fired. I just let them go. It was actually kinder to let them go and fire them. They had been sitting there feeling bad. They felt terrible that they knew they weren't contributing to the outcome of the team. They knew they were doing bad things, and they just needed somebody to sit down with them and say, "Hey, it's okay. We like you. We know you like us, but there's probably something that you'd be happier doing, and it's obviously not what you're doing right now." And it worked out great. And all of those individuals, because I did stay in contact with them, went on to do great things, and they went on to find roles that they love doing. So it is kinder to let somebody go when you know it's the right thing to do. So that was myth number 4. So 5th myth, firing somebody will destroy morale. Totally the opposite. I've kind of seasoned my discussion with this throughout. But letting somebody go for the right reasons is actually great for morale. What it does is it lets the group know that you care about them and you care about your success, and that you're not at all shy or afraid to say, "Hey, this isn't the best team player for our team." One of the things that a lot of individuals at work maybe don't talk about openly, but it is a very common theme, is how important it is to feel like you're part of a winning team. People don't want to work at a company where you're losing. People don't want to work at a company where people don't do their job. People don't like working in a team or in a department where there are one or more people that aren't carrying the load or aren't doing their job. It's not fun. They go home and they tell their spouse or partner, whomever it is, what a miserable experience it is working with that person who's not doing their job. And this is actually very, very true in organizations. It unfortunately happens every day, where there's team members that aren't doing what they need to do, and the organization, for whatever reason, either because the person is skilled or because they're nervous or worried about firing them will hurt the morale, or where they want to be 100% sure, any of the things I've talked about, they wait to let this person go. That person sits there and they're there month after month, and they create these problems over and over again. And what that does is it sends a really negative, terrible message to your people, which is that mediocrity and not doing your job is totally okay, and we're just going to wait and we're not going to do anything. And it doesn't reward the people who are doing their job. It actually destroys morale. It diminishes the level of respect that the individual has towards leadership and making smart decisions. It makes people feel like the senior leadership or the leadership in an organization doesn't care about really winning or succeeding, because they're allowing these average or mediocre or toxic people to stay in the group. And that's no different if you're talking about a sports team. I've used a sports analogy already, but I'll use it again. You have someone who's not playing effectively, and the whole team knows it, because you're on the field playing every day. And it doesn't matter whether it's an accounting department or a programming team or a legal research team, software developers, designers. When there's a person who is disorganized, or there's a person who isn't skilled, they cannot, no matter what you do, walk in the room and tell you what's wrong or what's right, or actually bring value to that conversation. When you have a person who doesn't actually deliver quality work, and we'll talk about those 3 things I just covered in a different talk, but those are really critically important, is the ability to be organized, the ability to have that expertise to come in and add value, and then delivering quality work, meaning that when you deliver something, it's actually done, it's done right. If it's not done right, it's not done. So you have an individual who either isn't doing one or more of those, or maybe they're not doing any of those, and everybody around them knows it. It's not as though others don't see it. And it destroys their morale to have to come to work every day and work with this individual who's not doing their job, to work with this individual who's not skilled and can't add value, or work with this individual who's not organized, doesn't meet deadlines, isn't able to get things done. So firing people doesn't destroy morale. Waiting to fire somebody destroys morale. And this is teased out in surveys, and if you doubt what I'm telling you, just go to Google or go to ChatGPT and ask whether or not firing somebody is going to destroy morale, or whether it's better to let somebody go who's not performing well, whether that's better for morale. And you'll find that pretty consistently there are articles written about this. It really is an important thing to keep in mind as you're looking at whether or not to let somebody go. So we've talked about the 5 myths tied to letting people go. There's a lot more we could touch on tied to letting people go or firing. But kind of wrap up and let's talk about firing overall. When should I fire somebody? The first thing I would ask yourself is have expectations been made clear? And if the answer is yes, more than once, on more than one occasion, we've talked to this person, we've met with this person, we've had a discussion, we've explained what was wanted, we've explained what we needed, and yet the person still isn't delivering that. That's strike number 1. Have you provided direct feedback? Have you made the time to sit down with the person and say, hey, I know that when we started working together, we had this expectation that things were going to be great. Things haven't really been great, and let me walk you through why. Have you actually provided that feedback? Not in an abrasive, argumentative way, but like truly feedback given on the individual, and not waiting to put it on a piece of paper, but have you made the time to sit down with the person, look them in the eyes, had the tough conversation of like, hey, things aren't going as well as I'd like them to go. That's number 2. And of course, if the feedback has been given and things haven't changed, that's like kind of strike number 2. Have you provided any documentation? Have you made the time to write this down and send an email like, thank you so much for making time to meet with me earlier. We talked about the fact that some of the expectations that we've laid out haven't been met, provided some feedback. Just want to make sure that I kind of memorialize this in writing or put it in writing so that you had this in writing. And by the way, these are the expectations. We'd like you to show up at this time, be on time, or do these things at work and so forth and so on. And if you've done these 3 things and the person still continues the pattern of this behavior, whatever that may be, showing up late, not getting things done, making mistakes, failing to spell check, whatever it is, it's either the person doesn't really want to do the job, and it would really be better to get them to go do something they're passionate about, or it's just not a good fit. It's just not a role that they are either equipped to do or skilled to do, or I hesitate to say that because most anybody can be trained. But we could agree that their heart's not fully in it, because if somebody's really wanting to do well and they're really wanting to do a job, they'll find a way to get it done. They'll find a way to prioritize learning how to be on time, learning more about these skills, asking questions, and they'll be someone who contributes with a positive attitude in a way that actually makes people around them feel better about them being there, as opposed to, geez, the person is just a drain on the organization, And I think another question to ask is just candidly, is the team better or worse off because of this person being here? And that one's a little tough, because when they're really highly skilled, it's easy to fall into the trap of, well, hey, this person's the best person I've ever met that's a software programmer. This person's the best designer I've ever met, or this person's the best accountant I've ever met. Like their ability to like find patterns and numbers is incredible, right? So the team's better because they're here. That's one piece of the puzzle. Remember, there's the 3 things to look at with an individual. Are they skilled? Can they do the job, which is what we just talked about? Do they work hard? Do they set a good example for those around them? Are they there with the team on the ground doing work, right? And then probably the most important is, are they upbeat and are they contributing to the people around them? I've heard a lot of leaders say to me, well, I don't really care if the person's upbeat and contributes to the culture. I just want them to get the job done. And there's some truth in the value of that. But if you're actually wanting to build a team, meaning that there's more than one person there, right? If you're actually wanting to build something that's going to last and do really well, you've got to remember that each individual has an impact on the people around them. And if you have a person who's highly skilled and yet they're dragging the team down emotionally and they're creating upset and emotional distress and so forth and so on, those other team members are not going to be as effective. They're not going to be as successful because those other team members are in the middle of feeling upset and frustrated and angry, no matter how smart or good that person may be. And it's not that the person's not smart, it's just that they may be a jerk, or it's not that they're not smart, it's just that they may be an asshole, or whatever you don't need to name call. But this individual isn't helping the team because of the way that they're behaving. And if your team is better off if that person wasn't there, ignoring for a moment that it may take a minute or a little while for you to replace that skill. But if the rest of the impact that that person is having on people around them is really negative, it's probably better that they're not there. So, if there's a pattern and it's clear and improvement isn't happening, truly the kindest thing you can do for the individual and for your team and your company is to let that person go and find something else that they want to do, that they will be passionate about, where they will succeed. So hopefully that's helpful, and look forward to talking to you guys in the future.